Okay, I am here to do a video with my mother and my stepdad, and we are going to talk about the topics of marriage, raising children, sex, and reproduction. And to start out, this is all going to be based around a film that is called The Way We Live, Family Matters, and it kind of describes the difference between biological families and step families, alternative families, the institution of marriages and how people raise their children in traditional families or lesbian and gay families. And in the film, the census describes a family as two or more individuals related by birth, marriage, or adoption living in one household. And the first question that I would like to ask of the two of you in that is that too vague of a description? Do you think that there are a lot more families that don't really fit into that category that are underrepresented?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I think a lot of families are unrepresentative. I think you have grandparents raising their children. I think you have aunts and uncles raising children. And I'm not so sure that the census covers all of that.
Yeah, because I would say the typical family is kind of described as the mom, dad, two kids,
Sure.
dog, white picket fence. But in your case, you're both raising a niece who's
Exactly.
14. So, I mean, how has that kind of impacted your outlook on families and kind of your own relationship?
Well, I can say that we
It's okay.
definitely consider her our family. I mean,
she's a blessing.
yeah, she's a blessing.
She's a blessing.
It's definitely different from us. I mean, from what we're used to, we were both married with different people, and we had kids of our own, you included. And John has a son in Indianapolis that's a police officer, actually a lieutenant. He's a police officer. So it's a different kind of experience because we both had sons, and now we have a 14-year-old. Basically, I have a 14-year-old daughter who steals my makeup, steals my clothes, steals everything she can get her hands on. Not because she wants to be a thief, but just because she figures, hey, if Aunt Becky's using it, I can use it.
Well, we went so long for, maybe 10, 12 years with that, just having the only kid that we had was a little Yorkie, 8-pound Yorkie girl. So basically that was the extent as far as having kids, besides, because all our kids were raised and they were out doing their own thing. So when she came along, it's just been a blessing because she's warmed the house up. I mean, just everything, She
Sure.
just,
Agreed.
That's awesome. Well, I'd kind of like to move to the subject of marriage, if we could. And Mom, you being married twice, John, you
Sure.
being married 3 times. Do you think that marital values have kind of changed at all over the years? Do you think that people still have the same value over their marriage that they used to, or do you think it's more or less a title than an actual connection?
I think it depends on the people.
Well, of course.
I know that we are one but two.
Sure.
But I think there are people that maybe just utilize marriage as a tax cut. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things that would definitely not be where my thought process is.
Sure.
But
unfortunately, with the divorce rate over 50%, it's just so people just.
It's easier to get a divorce than it is to get married, almost.
Well, no, it's just yeah.
Well,
Right.
I mean, and I see a lot of people, even my own age, that have gotten married very early on, and I mean, I see a lot of them in somewhat miserable relationships as a result. But I don't think that a lot of people take it as seriously as they used to.
No,
and in that case, it kind of moves to the question: are a lot of people together that don't have a connection? I would say so. And I think a lot of that's a result of people who have kids together and their relationship stays together because they have children.
Right.
I would imagine everybody's seen that. Everybody's seen
Sure.
the wife and husband that doesn't belong together, but they had kids and they try to make it work out. I mean, I've even seen situations where The husband and the wife lived together from the outside, but where the wife would go and stay at a different location.
Sure.
Not, a different location nightly, but had a different place that she went every night to stay. But every morning she was there to pick the kids up, take them to school, and she would stay home, wait for them to get off, and come home. She'd spend time with them. There'd be dinner, and then she would leave. And what was crazy to me is that no one knew where she would go at night. The husband, the kids, nobody knew. But that was just all for the sake of keeping that marriage together, for the sake of the kids until they were graduating from high school.
Yeah, big disconnect.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that makes a difference depending upon what kind of marriage you have. If you have a marriage that is based on domestic violence and other basically bad things, in certain cases it's better if you just if the mother leaves.
Sure.
Regardless of whether or not you're trying to keep a relationship with your kids, but there's a lot of situations where you have where that's an issue. I mean,
absolutely.
Where if you've got domestic violence going on, you're doing double the damage.
Yeah.
I personally think.
Even in light of that, I mean, there are a lot of kids that would have been better off if the parents had separated and co-parented.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
And I think that
Definitely.
some people can just be better versions of themselves when they're not, have that constant turmoil.
When they don't have that tie.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
To other people.
And I think that they can be better parents to the kid as a result of that.
Absolutely.
So another thing I'd like to talk about is gay and lesbian families, and how I think that in recent years there's been a hell of a lot more acceptance towards that institution. I know that a lot of people thought that was kind of like an obstruction of the idea of marriage and this traditional setting and institution, but I know, John, in your case, Mike, your son, is in a marriage and he is gay, and when they passed, I think that was nationwide, Supreme Court passed that gay marriage was legalized, and he was able to do that and have that sense of equality with the marriage that you two have. I was kind of curious how that made you feel to know that he was to be treated on the same level.
Well, I when I first found out, it took a while. I struggled a little bit about it, but I just I had to look at him as a person
And
what he makes him happy, and what he does for me, for his his co-workers, is him being what he does. He's he's a lieutenant on the Indianapolis Police Department. He's a lieutenant in the Army. He's just the same as us. I don't look him any different, and what he does, I have no problem with that.
And I'm the same way. They come here.
I
And
love
we treat
him more.
them like we would treat anybody
I
that
love
comes
him.
to our house.
That's how it should be.
Yeah, no different. Either way, it doesn't matter.
In some cases, it's
So,
actually better.
So,
Sure. I can see that.
I truly just, I love him as just.
Exactly. I love
That's
him too. And I love his husband. So
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
you go.
Dane's great.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
He's a great guy.
He's
Very
a
personable.
compassionate guy. He's got a lot of empathy
Yeah.
for other
They
people,
love- they love-
and they
they
love
love
kids.
children.
They love
So.
they love their fellow police officers.
Yeah, and
So-
and the one thing that a lot of people, at the beginning of, I wouldn't say at the beginning of that because it's always been a thing, but there are a lot of people that were concerned that, gay families were not a good environment for children.
I think that's crap.
Yeah. I would
Personally.
agree, because I could imagine
anybody
Mike
can
and
love a
Dane
child.
raising great kids.
I
know
think
what I mean?
anybody can love a child, and it doesn't matter what their sexual orientation is or
Nationality, anything.
nationality is,
Whatever,
race is. I think if you
No.
want to raise kids,
If you got good,
Good.
you got good in
Good.
your heart.
Good for you.
If you got good in your heart, that will.
that's all that matters.
That's all. That's all it's about.
And that's about my opinion as far as it goes with anything. With people wanting to be together, legally, specific, but I say there's really truly not enough love in the world. So two people want to be together and be in love with each other. I think that's awesome because we need a lot more of that. So on the subject of that, do you think that kids that are raised by gay families are more likely to be that way themselves? Do you think that there in any way that type of sexuality is pushed off on children?
Not necessarily. I think kids respond to love. And it doesn't matter if it's a gay family or a regular, what we consider a regular family, which is a male parent versus a female parent. I think kids respond to love. And I don't necessarily think that means that they're going to be gay. I don't think that has anything to do with anything, really.
No, it's
personal. That's my personal thought. I don't know.
It's all about how you're brought up, with morals and respect and your parents loving you and saying, "Hey, I love you." Said, there's parents, there's parents that don't you might not even hear all your life growing up that you're growing up is that. Old school parent. My parents.
They didn't say I love you.
They really didn't.
My parents didn't either.
That was a.
But it was kind of a known.
But then again, I'm not saying anything about I was growing up. They were great to me and everything, but I'm just saying that it just all depends on the family.
It's a difference in
how you were brought up and raised.
Well, I think it's a difference in the time too. I think people are more likely to say I love you now than they were 25 years ago.
Absolutely.
It's just a difference in the time change. Now, do I think kids nowadays are a little bit more disrespectful? Yeah, I do. I think they're a little bit more disrespectful now. But I also think that parents are more apt to say I love you and want the best for their kids. Not that the people 25 years ago didn't, but they didn't necessarily know how to express it.
That makes sense. Okay. All right, well, I'd like to talk about sex and reproduction, which is a little bit of an odd subject, talking with Mom, but that's okay.
That's recording, right?
I know.
Yeah. Okay,
so, one question, sex outside of marriage, do you think that society has grown more accepting of that, or do you think that that's still kind of a taboo?
Oh, it's definitely more. It's more.
It's definitely more accepted.
It's definitely more accepted. Yeah, for sure. When I was.
It just depends.
When I was a teenager, if I'd have said, "Hey, Mom," "Hey, Dad," my boyfriend's gonna come over and we're gonna sleep together, they'd have been like, "Hell no."
Well, I would hope the parents today would probably say hell no as well.
But I think a lot of parents today don't say hell no.
That's
because that is their perspective of giving their children choices and still being able to keep an eye on what's going on. So, not necessarily being pro, hey, come over and stay all night, but I think they're more pro, this is a way we can keep a watch on our kids.
I guess I could understand that to a small extent.
Sure,
I think there's a fine line between disciplining your kids and being friends with them and having a relationship. But I'd say to a certain extent that you can be their friend when they're grown.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But what in your experience, having raised kids, what do you think is a smart age to have them? I know it depends on financial stability, which happens at different points in people's lives. It does. But when do you think that somebody is emotionally mature to care for a child?
Well, I had you at 20. And can I say I was absolutely ready? Probably not, but I loved you like nothing else. 20's probably too young.
Yeah. What role did family have in that? Being 20
were
and having
like
kids.
My parents were like your other parents. My mom and dad raised you like. We lived with them for quite a while, so they definitely had a big role in defining who you were. That's not to say that I didn't think I could handle it myself.
Sure.
I found myself in a position where that was the best thing for the two of us. So we went and lived with Grandma and Grandpa, and you were happy, and then we met John, and then it changed the dynamic a little bit.
To answer the age, first of all, I would have to say, 18, 20,
Probably too
early
young.
20s, too young. Because you're still growing up.
You're still kind of a kid
You're
yourself.
still kind of a kid, and so I would have to say again, I'm not being opinionated, but I would say somewhere in the latter 20s, early 30s.
I think it's better. You have a little bit more life experience, for sure.
You know more, absolutely. So that's just.
And in theory, if you're doing things right, financial stability will increase the older that you get. So that's
so
always
if you're
a plus.
already 30 and you've got some stability, that's definitely better for a child.
And everybody wants to give their kid the best life.
Exactly. You don't want to be in a situation where you can't provide.
Sure.
Which is why. I mean, I'm willing and able to say that's why we went to live with Grandma and Grandpa, because they could help provide you with a better financial stability.
Yes.
Rather
absolutely.
than me and you living on our own, which it would have been different.
It was hard.
It would have been possible, but it definitely would have been tight.
It would have been
Right.
tight. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So it was better to go live with them, and plus, I mean, grandparents have a wealth of information they can provide to their grandkids. It's a whole, your grandpa took you fishing, and that's why you love fishing now, probably. It has something to do with grandpa, and, grandma took you everywhere. She took you everywhere with her. I mean, you were like her kid. So, I mean, grandparents have a wealth of information
A lot of influence.
that maybe an 18 or 20-year-old can't provide.
Sure. That
You know
totally
what I'm
makes
saying?
sense.
Yeah.
That 100% makes sense. Well, on the subject of raising kids, I know you just said earlier you think some kids are, a little more audacious and have more of an attitude than they should. Do you think that disciplinary standards are a little different now? Do you think that people are less capable of punishing their kids because of the pressure of society?
Oh, absolutely. Not that I think there's a way to discipline that doesn't involve corporal punishment. Maybe that was more popular.
Sure.
25, 50 years ago. But it's definitely had an impact on, anybody, a 5-year-old can call 911 and say, I'm being abused. But then you have these obscure cases where it's just blatant child abuse and the kids die.
Yeah.
And you're like, why would anybody, it makes no sense to me. You're not, you're not promoting a great childhood for your child if you are doing some of the things that parents are doing nowadays.
Yes.
But I think it's different. I think it's different for every family. I think that social services is off the hook when it comes to cases. And I think that people need to pay a little bit more attention to that. And I think right now we're in a situation where, we're all under quarantine and domestic violence has skyrocketed because kids that used to go to school and maybe a teacher would notice something was wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
They're not seeing that now because everybody's out of school because of the coronavirus.
School is the safest place for some kids.
It is. And that's the place where they get a daily meal that maybe they're not getting any other time, and that breaks my heart.
Yeah.
It totally breaks my heart because I want every kid to have supper and, lunch and breakfast. But school's probably the only place they're getting it. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of domestic violence that's happening right now that none of us were aware of because the teachers aren't there to say, okay, where'd you get that bruise?
Yeah.
Or
Well,
whatever.
Well, and even speaking of relationships, the one thing about that people are talking about, be thankful that you're at home and you're safe. That's what a lot of people are saying about the quarantine.
Right.
Some people are at home and they're not safe.
Exactly.
You know,
And that's victims of domestic violence. That's the victims of sexual assault. That's victims, period, who quarantine's not a great thing. I mean, everybody's saying it's great, but for some people, it's not great.
Yeah, it's not a vacation for some people.
No.
It's not a vacation. Exactly.
All right. Well, I think that honestly covers everything that we had to talk about. I majorly appreciate you both participating in the conversation. Again, this is my mother and stepdad, John and Rebecca Leeper, and thank you for listening.
Yep. Thank you.